Hi, I'm Danielle, and this is Chatter Out Loud, a podcast where I share thoughts and TV commentary on shows I like to watch. Now, before I start, I want to ask that you go ahead and like, follow, share, and subscribe. And on YouTube, where I upload my companion episode of the podcast, be sure to hit the notification bell. This way you can get a notification every time I post a new episode, and you won't miss out. It doesn't cost you anything to follow and subscribe, so go ahead. Okay, I'll wait. And thank you in advance. All right, so in today's episode, I'm chatting about the new TV series on NBC called The Endgame. It's episode 2, and it's titled Fairytale Wedding. The synopsis for this episode is as follows. A kidnapping orchestrated by Elena puts Val to the test as her past resurfaces and becomes a part of the bigger play. The FBI task force contends with an unexpected turn of events in one of the banks. All right, so let's get into it. In this episode, we learn more about Elena's past as the episode shows us a younger Sergei and Elena and how much they are in love right before their wedding in Belarus in 2012. So we're flashing back to the past, or we're flashing back, right, to 2012 in Belarus. They arrive at the church, where outside the church, they are greeted by Sophia. And Sophia, that's Sergei's mom or his mother, right? We learn that Sophia raised Elena and is like a mother to her. Sophia obviously loves her and gives Elena a wedding gift that is a crown jewel, a brooch, I believe. And also, in that moment, Sophia shares words of wisdom with Elena. She tells her, let me see what I had here. Sophia tells Elena that men are the face, but the women are the power. And she donned her as the queen, right? So afterwards, Sophia makes her way back into the church while Sergei and Elena were still outside of the church, right in front. And they're having their talk like loving couples do. They're talking about their future and getting married. And then it happens. Yeah, the bomb goes off and blows up the church with everyone in it. We saw the bomb being planted by someone earlier in the episode, and they covered the bomb in a bag, disguising it as a wedding gift. And they put it in the cubby or something. We saw the lights flashing inside the bag. Of course, the bomb and blowing up everyone inside of the church. Of course, it was meant to hurt both Sergei and Elena, or maybe even kill them too, right? But anyway, that hurt both Sergei and Elena. It's another part of their story experiencing pain. And I should mention, after the bomb went off, we see Sergei, filled with so much grief. He's holding his mom. Elena then told him that they had to flee because whoever planted that bomb probably meant to kill them as well. And since they didn't get married on that day, they bonded by giving each other the dove tattoo. We see both of them in the last episode and this one too, staring at the tattoo, rubbing their wrist. It's like their symbol of love, right? So we see how that tattoo came about. Back to present day. Elena wants to share another story with Val, and at this time, all Val is interested in knowing is how did Elena frame Owen? Remember, Owen is in prison serving time for taking money from a cartel when he was a federal agent. Only we learned in the last episode that Elena framed Owen. And so Val wants to know how she did it, and she's questioning her. And how is Owen tied to Elena? That's what Val is trying to figure out. She also wants to understand the purpose and the why when it comes to Elena Fedorova and the banks and Owen. Meanwhile, in the banks, remember the banks are a part of the plot. And in this episode, we are now on day 2, 12 hours later, moving into day 3 by the time the episode ends. So it's still moving pretty quickly. Not as much as the first episode, but it's still moving fast, right? So in this period of time, the task force is talking about the PR and the optics of the bank heist and how to control it, right? They want to control the optics. While Elena is still wanting to talk about another story. And this time it's a story about a mother and her complicated child. That the complicated child couldn't stay out of trouble. And the mother had to face reality about that. And this story was twofold tonight, right? The first part was surrounding the Homeland Secretary. Remember, at the end of the first episode, Elena threatened that she was going to be next, right? So we saw that they kidnapped the Homeland Secretary's son and strapped a bomb with a timer to his body. The second part of that story, the mother and her complicated child that couldn't stay out of trouble. The second part to that was surrounding, the second meaning to that, right? The first meaning had to do with the Homeland Security's son. The second meaning had to do with Val and her own mother, who was killed by someone called Bigby. And Bigby killed Val's mom in retaliation to Val's dad, who was the arresting officer of Bigby, right? So Val's dad was an officer, and he arrested Bigby. Bigby retaliated against him by killing Val's mom, right? In a shootout or something. It was a drive-by shootout. So just hold on to that for a minute and hold on to the whole mother and her complicated child story, okay? I want to go back to what's occurring inside the bank. I can never get his name, so I'm going to refer to him as the reckless hostage inside the bank. He is either a manager or a loan officer in the bank. In the first episode, we were introduced to him because we saw him happily turn down a black woman's loan. And it was like he enjoyed it. And the only reason I'm referencing her color is because later on in this episode, it's used against him by one of Elena's crew, who's heist, who's part of that bank heist, telling him to do better. So that's why. I'm calling him reckless because this was the same guy that was using his hidden cell phone to text information not only to the police, giving them the layout of the bank, but we also learned that from the first episode, we learned that this hostage also used that cell phone to talk to his mistress. So that's why I'm calling him the reckless hostage, right? We can all, and we'll have a frame of reference there in terms of who I'm talking about. All right, so the reckless hostage. All right, so the reckless hostage, he decides to be the spokesperson for the hostages asking for food. They quickly shut him down. They grabbed his arm and wrestle him down to the ground. They then throw him lollipops and pretty much telling him to eat them if he's hungry. I thought the lollipops had something to do with the entire plot. Like I thought it was a clue, but we learned that it's not. The way that they grabbed his arm was strategic because we learned that they placed a patch under his arm, causing him to have a cardiac event. Mind you, the agents can see all of this on the monitors, and they decide to use that incident as a way to negotiate with Elena's crew to try to open up a line of communication and try to get more details in terms of why, what do they want, and things like that. It doesn't work, but they make an attempt and try to take advantage of the reckless hostage having this cardiac event. All right, so let's fast forward. They allow the reckless hostage to be removed by the paramedics, and they put him into the ambulance, only to have the paramedic reach under his arm, right? Remove that patch that quickly stops his cardiac event. And at the same time, she takes off meaning the paramedic, takes off his shoe to remove the thumb drive on the bottom of his shoe. So this was another planned event by Elena. They intentionally induced a cardiac event with that patch, and that was a way for them to get that thumb drive out of the bank. And the thumb drive is important because earlier we saw them use it, put it inside of like one of the databases, and they copied information and loaded it onto the thumb drive, right? So that this whole stunt was a way for them to get the thumb drive out to the paramedic. And because Elena is so in tune with how smart Agent Val Turner is, she knew that Val would figure it out which she did, and she intercepted the paramedic, taking her into custody. When they interrogated the paramedic, she relayed a similar message as the first inside guy. Remember him? He was the one that planted that note in the attorney general's pocket. And he kept saying, "You're going to see, it's a plan, the why," or, something to that effect. And so did the paramedic, shared a similar message, right? So this is all calculated. This is all planned. And I have to admit, at this point of the episode, I'm questioning how realistic this is, Don't get me wrong. I'm enjoying the entertainment value. As one of you said in a comment, you love the chemistry between Morena, who plays Elena's character, and Ryan, who plays Val's character, or the Val character. But from the level of planning involved, from Elena, and how everything is so calculated, it's getting hard for me. It's getting hard for me to believe. Look, we know it's fiction. I'm just beginning to feel like it's a little too calculated, if that may be a criticism. So something has to go wrong soon. I don't know. We're only in the second episode. Everything is so strategic and so calculated. I guess that's the point that they want the viewers to understand. And it's only an observation as a viewer, right? I'm willing to hold on. I'm willing to ride this out. But what do you think? Are you believing these calculations? Like everything is so perfect and so planned, right? We want something to go wrong soon. All right. I do like how they move the story back and forth from the past to the present, like the flashbacks. I think I said this in my last Endgame episode, that they weave the past. They weave in the past to help develop the character so we can understand the frame of mind in present day, right? So I think that's important, and I like that. I like how that moves back and forth. It keeps me glued to the TV, because I swear if you miss seconds, you miss a lot. And I only watched this episode once. The first episode I had to watch a couple times. This one I watched once, but I was glued. I was afraid to move until a commercial break. I meant to go back to the story of the mother and the complicated child, right? This clue helped Val figure out the code to unlock the bomb from the Homeland Secretary's son, right? They threw it in, once they removed the bomb, right? It didn't, what is it? Not detonate, but the bomb didn't go off. So they entered the code to remove the vest, right? Because they had the bomb squad there, and they determined if you put in a code, we can get the vest off. And that's what they did. And then they threw that vest in some type of containment vessel to shield the bomb from blowing up the entire room. You know how we always see that in movies with the bomb squad, right? So they quickly took the vest off just in time. So that was kind of suspenseful. I like that part. The code that they entered, they were trying to figure out what is the code? What is the meaning? And Val being smart, knowing, okay, Elena does everything for a reason. Everything ties in. So she was thinking, and the code had to do with the name of the guy that killed Val's mother, Isaac Bigby, right? I just talked about him a little earlier. So they saved the Homeland Security son, and of course she thinks it's resolved. She meaning the Homeland Secretary, or am I saying security or secretary? I'm meaning to say Homeland Secretary's son. Homeland Secretary, not security. So if I said security, I apologize. So they saved the Homeland Secretary's son. And of course, she thinks it's resolved and still doesn't know or accept and realize how calculating Elena Fedorova is. She's saying that they should put her in a dark room in some type of solitary confinement or something to that effect to punish Elena for kidnapping her son. And to her son, meanwhile, the nautical ropes. Val had asked, they tied up the Homeland Secretary's son with nautical ropes. And Val, she understands like Fedorova just doesn't do things. She does things for a reason. There's a purpose behind everything. So she had questioned the Homeland Secretary asking her if she knew anything about the nautical ropes, because that was used to tie up her son. In addition to those nautical ropes, so hold on to that, the thumb drive, what was on the thumb drive pretty much told the Homeland Secretary's secret. And that wound up getting her arrested in the end, right? The nautical rope was a clue to the coast, and the thumb drive showed a video of the Homeland Secretary having a meeting in a car with a cartel boss, asking for $10 million, where she'll allow him to bring in his drugs through the coast. Right? See how calculating everything is? Finally, we see that Anthony, another agent, we were introduced to him in the last episode, but he happens to be, I want to say Val's partner, but he's another agent. He's very loyal to Val. He helps to put together a team to sweep Val's car, as they suspect that there's a bug inside of Val's car, because Elena had used a term, street fighter, that she used when she was in a conversation with Anthony inside of the car. And then she remembered, she just threw that term back at me. So how does she know that? And then they realize, the car is bugged. Anyway, Elena is determined to get Val to see that they are partners and have mutual pain, right? So she's trying to say, she uses terms like mothers stolen from us and the pain it caused. Remember, Sophia, we started off this episode talking about Sophia and the love that Elena had for Sophia. Sophia is Sergei's mother, and she was killed in that bomb inside the church when they were getting ready to get married. So she feels like that's a mother stolen from us, as well as drawing Val into the story. And Val's mom was killed, right? Was killed by that Isaac Bigby person. Again, a mother stolen from us, right? So they both had their mothers killed, and the pain that caused. So Elena is using that, and she's determined to get Val to see we're partners and we have mutual pain. And so that's how I see her drawing in Val in an attempt to get her to do what, though, right? To go against whom? That's the mystery. That's what we're going to learn as the season progresses. The whole episode is bait and switch. Elena promises to give them additional clues or more knowledge, as she says, only if Val keeps her word. And I don't remember where this happened in the episode, but Elena wanted her clothes, as she'd been in the same outfit, that same pretty blue dress, for going on 3 days. So she wanted her clothes to she wanted a change of clothing, and she wanted them to go get her clothes. And again, with everything being so calculated by Elena, when they were trying to get to the Homeland Security's son, someone had placed Elena's trunk of clothing inside the trunk of Val's car. And this was found during the sweep of her car, right? So see how well Elena knows Val? She figured out Val would figure out, she already knew Val would figure out that, she might have a bug, and they have the car, and to have the car swept, like, for bugs, right? Or to sweep the car for bugs. I think that's how you say it. Anyway, so while they were doing that, they found that blue trunk, and they didn't find anything suspicious in the trunk, other than the picture of Elena, Sergei, and who? Owen. So the picture was of the three of them at a restaurant. So, of course, they show Val the picture. When Val confronted Elena about the picture, she demanded to know the context and what were they doing together at that restaurant. So we see Elena in her clothing as promised, right? Because they bring the clothes back to her, and we see she has on that brooch that she was given that brooch by Sophia. Remember, and that's when Sophia donned her the queen, and they end the episode showing Val going to the prison to ask Owen about the picture. Of course, Owen again asks Val to just let it go, leave him behind, go on with her life. And as we remember in the first episode, we saw Owen giving Val divorce papers, right? Trying to say, go on with your life, leave me behind. Of course, Val refuses. He asks her again, and she's like not relenting. She's like, no, I want to understand what this picture is about. What is going on? How you're involved? How are you tied to Elena? And he kind of like stops the conversation. He gives her a four-leaf clover before walking away from her in the prison. I'm thinking we should remember this four-leaf clover. It might come back to us as some type of clue, or it might come back as some type of clue. Maybe, I don't know. Afterwards, Owen goes back into the work area inside the prison. Of course, he's updating Sergey, and Sergey's like, what do you tell him? He's like, nothing. Now, here's where I chuckled in the episode. Sergey told Owen he wanted to tell him a joke. And I said, oh my goodness, we have Elena wanting to tell a story, and now Sergey wanting to tell a joke. I mean, that was funny to me. Anyway, Sergey told the joke about the laziest prisoner digging a tunnel. And I feel we should hold on to that as a clue, by the way. Owen didn't find it funny, but Sergey said, I know who would find my joke funny. So he goes back to his cell, picks up contraband. I think that's what they call it in prison, right? Anyway, he picks up his hidden cell phone and he begins to do Morse code. And I say Morse code, I didn't know that it was Morse code right away. I thought he was just like texting someone. I'm like, who is he texting? But we knew it was Morse code because the light on the equipment outside of the room where Elena was held in, it begins to blink. It catches Elena's eye. And then, of course, she sees the light blinking, right? And then she begins to laugh. So clearly, Sergey knows where Elena is. She knows he's alive. Of course, we figured that out in the first episode. But they know there's more to this. It's more calculation, more things to hold on to, or more clues, I should say. All right, so by the cadence of the show, at least what we've seen in the last two episodes, we'll get more stories from Elena, maybe more jokes from Sergey. I don't know. But anyway, it'll peel more layers into her past history of love and pain and loss, right? We'll get more into Val and Owen's history. We'll see who will be targeted next. The Attorney General was the first, then the Homeland Secretary. And I remember, or do you remember Elena saying that everyone in the room is gonna, pretty much be targeted. So I think the next person in the room at that time is the director, I think. Right? Anyway, you have to tell me what you thought of the episode. Did I miss anything? Like, leave me a comment. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if I missed anything. Let me know how you're liking the show. I'm still liking it. The calculations, I think they're too calculated at this point, so something has to go wrong. And maybe we'll see that in this upcoming episode 3. So who knows? All right. And that's all I have. So be sure to come back and give me a listen. I'd love for you to like, share, follow, and subscribe. You can also leave me a comment, leave me a message. If you're listening to the podcast, there's a link to leave me a message right on that landing page. So check that out. Okay. My name is Danielle, and you're listening to my podcast, Chatter Out Loud. Thank you so much for joining me. And as always, I appreciate your support. And that's all I have. Thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.